Now call on Sarah Boyack to speak to move Amendment 3963.215.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. Well, I do also concur with John Swinney that this is a significant bill for us to be debating today, and I do think it's highly appropriate as we hit 10 years of the Scottish Parliament being in operation. I think it will be the most important bill we actually pass in this Parliament. Now, we could debate that amongst ourselves afterwards, but in terms of its long-term ambitions and the challenge it attempts to address, I think that's a fair argument. But it will only be a successful bill if we all buy into it. Now, that does not mean that we all have to agree with each other at this stage. There is time for more detailed consideration at stage 2. We certainly believe the bill isn't strong enough at the moment, and there are significant gaps that still need to be addressed. We particularly think that climate change needs to involve all government decisions from now on, but that our agenda has to involve all of us as citizens and as consumers, and in people involved in businesses and trade unions and church groups as well. So I want to address 3 things. Firstly, the need to act now and to set ourselves the right targets and benchmarks, the need to get our governance structures right, and the need to put in place a whole series of policy programmes which both tackle the recession that we currently experience, but also tackle climate change at the same time. And our top line is that the bill does not go far enough. We certainly welcome the comments that have been made and the announcement that has been made by the Cabinet Secretary today, but we still feel that the bill does not go far enough. It doesn't address the early years and would represent a massive missed opportunity if the bill were to be passed as it now stands. The SNP's manifesto commitment for 3% annual statutory targets was not a policy that we considered to be the right approach during the election campaign, and we argued our corner. And given the fact that it was dumped as soon as it did its job to harvest Green voters for the SNP, we believe it said more about a cynical electoral strategy than a genuine commitment to radical action. Because the alternative approach laid out in this bill is simply not good enough, and it is a betrayal of trust of the many thousands of people who voted for the SNP on that basis. No, I just want to get started. The critical time to act is now. It must be meaningful and it must be real action. And the driver for success has got to be tougher, quantified interim targets. And that's why we've laid our amendment today to concentrate minds. We believe we need to send businesses, government departments and agencies and people in Scotland a clear message that this Parliament intends to act now. We believe there needs to be political accountability built into the system, and we need to incentivise the sort of thinking that starts to turn things around now, not in 2018 on the eve of a 2020 target. We believe a 2020 target is too far off. It's too far off to drive short-term action with a sense of urgency, but it's also too far even to incentivise the medium-term policies that governments will need to deliver by 2020. It's 3 elections away, and we need today to bring the day of action closer to home, to the SNP today and to the next 2 Scottish governments, which we hope will be Labour ones. Delighted to take an intervention.
Thank you very much. Would it be helpful if the member understood we are quite happy to support the Labour amendment today? And would the member also recognise that in putting 42% on the face of the bill, as we intend to do in the context of European agreement to 30%, we are challenging others who have to be our partners to step up to the plate so that together we can deliver with annual targets every year to 2020 on precisely what the member is discussing just now.
Well, they're not quantified as we understand it. The targets that were statutory kick in from the year 2020, before that it's regulations. We absolutely support a 34% target. That's what I understood John Swinney said would be in the face of the bill. The 42% we understand is if we get action, collective action at Copenhagen. That's why I'm not critical of the target you're setting for 2020. We understand why you've gone for the target. The challenge, we think, is to supplement that. We didn't believe in annual targets, but we do think we need midpoints. We accept the point of the environmental campaigners that each government should be accountable for what it does. And we welcome the SNP support for our amendment today. If it's very brief.
I will do. I think I answered the point that Sarah Boyack is making in my response to Patrick Harvey, in that the setting of targets within regulation obliges ministers to act in a fashion that sets us on a trajectory that delivers the 2020 interim target that I think we all now agree, if I understand Sarah Boyack correctly, is exactly the right position for the bill to be in.
We think we need quantifiable targets on the way to that process. And we think that we need to actually, that's why we've put our amendment on the Chamber today, so that each government can be assessed as to its progress. Every time respected scientists review the position on climate change, they tell us that while they cannot be certain of how climate change will really take place in the future in relation to feedback mechanisms, that the situation is more urgent than the previous time they reported. That's the story of the IPPC reports and the UK Government's Committee on Climate Change, and that's why we want tougher, earlier action. We don't agree with just taking arbitrary annual targets because we think different things can happen annually. We think we need to judge each government on its track record. We know that we have to go beyond paying lip service to the challenges and actually change how we do things. And we do believe it's the next 10 years that are crucial, not the debate about 2050. It's very easy to get sucked into long-term targets and ignore the short-term challenges. That's why we want to go for unambiguous, quantified targets. We need to start doing something now, and we need to set ourselves on a path of radical reductions in carbon emissions. And we need to focus not just on how we're doing with reporting to the Parliament on a yearly basis, but the consideration of cumulative targets as well. Because everything we do in the early years has an extra dividend. We're not just meeting a target, we're actually ensuring that those carbon emissions are not created in the atmosphere for generations to come. That's surely something we can all agree on. And we don't believe that will happen without more serious pressure. That is why we've laid out our amendment today. It is not just designed to affect the current government. It is there to signal to the system as a whole that we are all serious. We believe that the Transport Infrastructure Committee's climate change report is an excellent report, and it's a late stage and a lengthy progress of debate. We also think that the reports from the Rural and Environment Committee, particularly the recommendations on waste and their strong recommendations to dump the potential privatisation of 25% of the Forestry Commission estate, excellent recommendations. We also thought that the contribution by the EAT Committee has given us an invaluable set of recommendations, and we believe the Government should be looking to implement all of them. We argued for a debate for a whole week on this bill, not just because it's gone to 3 committees, but because of the range and depth of issues that this bill needs to actually address if we're to get it right. If we'd only been debating the bill this afternoon, we simply wouldn't have addressed the range of issues that need to be picked up before stage 3. Last month's lobby was a graphic illustration of the support there is in our communities for a radical climate change bill. Our support for the principles of the bill will be clear at stage 1, but we still want to flag up that there are many amendments we believe are needed to make the bill more radical and more effective.